Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor
And his friend Jake
gives you sports betting tips. I am your host, Professor Sides, and you can find us on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. We're everywhere now.
TikTok.
TikTok. We did a TikTok. The basketball one's like in the air right now, but I won the football one. So I started off undefeated, 1-0 on TikTok plays. So
Retire it now.
Yeah, retire now. Yeah, exactly. We're everywhere. You can find links in the show description. But we're talking college basketball here today. Select games that are scheduled to be played on Wednesday, November 23rd, 2022. You should here check out the webpage on the banner. It's www.pickswiththeprofessor.com/new for a primer and explanation. Otherwise, the goals for this episode are to share key information about these games, give you a few things to think on, and explain how certain plays are being made. We never recommend blindly tailing or fitting any pick, rather to hear the justifications and thought processes to make sure you are fully on board with us or against us before investing your hard-earned money. Remember that Sideline has graded plays on every single game, but as always, take what you like and leave the rest. If you have questions about these games or others, the best place to get those answers is on our Discord chat, which can be accessed through Patreon. Link is in the show description. As always, remember there are no locks in gambling, so what Sideline provides are loves, likes, and leans, that is A, B, and C grades, to indicate its confidence level with respect to scaling wagers. However, please understand that good and bad variance will occur, so as much as we'd like to say we'll be profitable each and every day, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Jake, we were talking before show about the parlay and how we both liked Tech in the under, but we had no line when we recorded this yesterday because it's one of the tournament games, so we couldn't play that one, and I tweeted it out specifically that I like the under in Tech, and I highlighted it for our Discord. You just said, hey, y'all, I like this under in this Tech game. I had Tech as a B grade pick, and so it's on record that I like both of those as well. And of course, that hits, and then we have Sam Houston, who wins easily and decides they're going to score 88 points. I mean,
yeah. They just didn't stop like we thought they would. They just kept going and going.
They just kept going. Yeah, they just kept going, and then you had UT Martin plus 3.5. They were ahead with 1 minute to go, and they don't just lose. They don't even cover, and they didn't really come close to cover. I think they lost by like 6, being ahead with like a minute 8 to go. I feel like this week specifically, I feel like your luck, it's got to turn at some point. It'll be fun when it does.
Yeah, I'll be so happy when it does. But man, I feel like I'm reading these games right, and it's just not breaking my way.
Yeah, and it's not all of them, obviously. Like, it's not one of those where it's like every single loss is that way, but it's enough that it would make things go just a whole lot smoother if the bad luck would go away. Then it's like, hey, you can miss a couple here and there, no big deal, but you get the ones that you should, and you miss the ones that you should, and I've talked about this before. You have these stretches and where it's frustrating because you don't get the flip of that, which is the good luck. I should have never won, but I did. We're not getting any of those, right? And that's where it's frustrating because, like, when you do a large sample, enough games, and the Sideline has picks on every game, and it has those as when you're picking 40 games in a day, 50 games in a day, it's got a couple that it was bad losses and a couple that it was good luck wins, right? But when you're just picking a couple, it sometimes that variance skyrockets, and that's kind of what we're seeing here. I talked about it in baseball season as well. There were stretches where we just were on, the model was on fire, and I would tell people, I was like, I don't know if it's going to do the same thing today. Like, yesterday's performance is not indicative. Look at the large sample results, right? And that's where the model's doing really well. You're making picks based off the model, so I think it'll come around. It's just some small sample variability. And when we get the good luck ones, it'll be a whole lot more fun than having the bad luck ones like we've seen lately.
Yeah, it'll make me feel a lot better.
Yeah, and we talked about the parlay too. It's coming. I was joking before. I was like, you're gonna hit like 4 in a row, and they're gonna lose like 8 more in a row because that's how these things just kind of go. So maybe today's the one that we'll get. But before we get to these games, some reminders: please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, if you aren't yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free, and if you turn on notifications, and you won't miss any of the college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. I've already mentioned that Patreon as well, but check it out if you haven't. Lots of great benefits to be found there above and beyond what we do here. Membership starts at just $3 per month. www.patreon.com/pickswiththeprofessor. But even if you're not there, we're still thrilled to have you here. Let's get to it. All in courtesy of Bet Online. Sign up link in the show description and current as the time of this recording on Tuesday night. There are 10 A-grade plays that I have locked into BetStamp and posted on Patreon. Posted those about 8 p.m. Central Time for our Patreon subscribers. There were 10 A-grade plays. Jake, of all those 10, Your favorite was in the Coastal Carolina at Missouri game, 6 p.m. Central tip-off. Sideline says this should be Missouri minus 11.5. Sideline locked in an A-grade play at 14.5. Jake, why is this the best of the A-grade plays on Wednesday?
Look, getting 14.5 with Coastal is incredible, and that's what we're going to do here. Don't let Missouri's record fool you. They're 5-0, and that – I'm not trying to take any away from them, but they have not played a single team of value. They've really beat up the bottom tier teams, but like Mississippi Valley State. But I mean, it's just they are not playing anybody. I'm not sure why they're laying such a big number. Coastal Carolina's only played 3 games, 2 of those against D2 teams where they handled their business, and then lost to I think it was Arkansas Pine Bluff about 1 or 2. Like it was a very close game. They've got. I'm assuming they're brothers. They're both named Brown on the same team, both really good at basketball. They could not be. Brown's a common last name, but it seems likely. Chamorro is averaging 21.7. The other Browns averaging 16, but the real unsung hero of this team is Henry Abraham. He is an extremely good point guard. Doesn't score much, doesn't need to, but plays 32 minutes a game, averaging around 8 assists and a couple steals. Doesn't turn the ball over a lot. He really controls the game. And Coastal really wants to slow the game down. And what you need for that is a really good point guard, a guy you trust with the ball on the floor as much as possible, and that they have that. Missouri wants to run. I don't think they've got the team to force Coastal to run. I think Coastal slows us down, keeps it like around 10 or 11 the whole game, and I don't think they stand a good chance to win it. I don't think they have that much talent, but they've got the guards here to really control the pace and not play Missouri's game, and I think that will keep them in the game.
USC Upstate was the loss that they had by 1 point on the road. Better than Pine Bluff. Pine Bluff's been kind of frisky this year, but it's a more respectable loss at least. So getting a ton of points here in this game. We always talk about, right, we kind of assume that coaches are going to do the smart thing, and sometimes they don't, right? But Coastal Carolina definitely wanting to, not necessarily a team like we talked about UMBC yesterday. They're not necessarily a team that always does that, but they aren't really a fast-paced team either. And we kind of assume that they're going to say, this is the style of game we want to play. If that happens, then getting all these points is going to make a lot of sense. Because we talk about if there's fewer possessions in the game, it's harder to win by a big number. So again, we're hoping that they're reading the situation the same thing that we are, and are not wanting to get too up and down. That's obviously what Missouri wants to do. And so if they slow it down, get them out of their game, they probably still lose. But again, they can lose by 8 or something, and we're perfectly happy getting 14.5 points with that sort of loss.
Yeah, easy.
All right, to the best B side. I think we locked in 10 B grade picks already as well. A little bit earlier in the day here for you. Noon Central, Chicago State and Cleveland State. Chicago State's actually been not terrible at basketball, which is surprising because I feel like last year, the year before, I feel like they've been just dreadful.
Yeah.
This year, they're not terrible. I mean, they're very bad, obviously, but they're not as you are definitely one of the worst 2 teams in the country bad, like they were, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe getting out of the conference made them relax. I don't know.
I'm not sure. They've at least crawled out of the bottom couple spots, playing well, covering a couple games, not losing by 40 every game, which is kind of what they had been doing before. They're going to play Cleveland State. So they're going to travel to Cleveland State. Sideline says this should be Cleveland State minus 10. Sideline locked in a B grade pick on Chicago State plus 12. Just think that's too many points. Chicago State's done a respectable job of hanging around, thinks they can hang around, probably not win, but at least not get embarrassed. Jake, what number did you lock in with Chicago State?
Look, this is where being in Patreon would have been nice because you would have got an extra 1.5. I'm still taking Chicago State plus 10.5, but that 12 really looks good. An extra bucket is nice. But, yeah. I mean, Cleveland State's playing better at this point in the year than they started off after losing to a D2 school and then their next 2 games. But they're very thin. Everything's run through. Tristan Inanora, I think so you say his name. Very good big guy. Doesn't have a lot of guards to help him get the ball. He's not a ball handler. So that kind of brings him down, and that's where I see this game being able to stay close is where Wesley Cadet Jr. is the best player on Chicago State, and he's a guard, so it's much easier to get the ball in Chicago State's best player's hands than it is Cleveland State. But neither of his teams are very good, so I don't recommend watching this unless you're just bored. Maybe help whoever's in the kitchen cooking for Thanksgiving and all that. But either way, you don't have to watch it to make this money.
It is on ESPN Plus if you're just itching for it,
Like I said, Wesley Cadet Jr., very good player. I don't know if he's on Chicago State next year, but they've got two other guys averaging double digits. This game really, in my mind, should be a toss-up. I think these teams are very, very even. So getting 10 points in a game that's a toss-up is a no-brainer.
Yeah, Chicago State, like I said, they've had some big losses to Northwestern and Kent State, but I mean those two teams, nowhere near Cleveland State. They beat IUPUI convincingly. They beat Valparaiso convincingly. They only lost by 12 at Marshall. So I mean, again, having a couple respectable games, and I feel like those three respectable games was like their whole season. Like they only had like 3 all last year. It seems like, and maybe they had a couple more, but it didn't seem like much. So we're going to grab all those points with Chicago State and think they got a chance to hang in there against Cleveland State tomorrow afternoon. So make sure you get on that one early. To the Jake on a Limb segment, situation where at least as of now, the model doesn't really have a good feel for the game, thinks it's priced pretty well. But Jake, you think you've got an angle on it and want to exploit something the model isn't seeing. 11 p.m. Central Time out in Anaheim, California. St. Mary's and Vanderbilt will play. St. Mary's, according to the model, should be a 7.5 point favor. I know we faded Vanderbilt a couple times this year, a couple times successfully, a couple times maybe not. What is your pick for this one?
Look, we're going to fade them again. I don't think St. Mary's is getting enough respect here. They are a very, very good team. They're a well-balanced team, a well-coached team. They don't turn the ball over. I think they're averaging under 10 a game. They play a slower pace, so that really helps out by not giving the ball away. It's really valuing every possession. Their defense is really, really good. After Oral Roberts, the very first game of the year, when everybody's trying to figure things out, they've blown out everybody. They're just a very, very solid team, and I don't think Vanderbilt is. We've faded them several times here, and that's the way it's going to continue to go. I don't think they've got enough to get past the defense that St. Mary's will put on them. I think St. Mary's wins this by 10-15.
All right, nice and easy there. All right, to the Shake and Bake with Jake, a game we're going to try a parlay. Still looking for a winner here. Get us yeah, off the schneid here, and then I think we can get it rolling. We're going to go to 6:30 p.m. Central, Tennessee at Butler. Jake, you're a Tennessee fan, but they obviously have been a little bit disappointing after last year. The model locked in an A-grade pick on Butler +8. Sideline says it should be only Tennessee by about 6.5. Neutral site game out of the Bahamas, one where Tennessee the model thinks Tennessee should win on average, but not by as much as the books do. Jake, what is your parlay for us in this one?
Look, we're going to take the points with Butler at 7.5, and we're going to go over 136. This should be a very tight game, back and forth. Both teams play at a fun pace, not like ultra fast, but at a fun one. But they're very kind of different how they go about it. Butler likes to run, score, and play a decent defense, where Tennessee likes to play really good defense and try their best to score. But, I mean, besides the Penn State game, Butler has been in the 89 twice and 95 once in the 3 other games. I know it's not against the greatest competition, but, I mean, they were taking care of their business. They're putting up points. I don't think they'll get up in the 80s or 90s this one, but closer to the 70s is where I see this one going. I mean, the rest of the team really seems to be stepping up, because Bates was the leading scorer for the first 2.5, 3 games, and now he's 4th on their average scoring. So he's taking a little bit more step back. They're shooting a little bit more from the outside, putting up some more points rather than playing through the middle. I really, really like this Tennessee's defense. Rick Barnes is a great defensive coach. You can ask my dad. We talk about this all the time. Really needs to hire an offensive coordinator. Not the best offense, but.
And look, And look, if you watch college football shows, you know this about me. My father was a Texas alum, which is where Rick Barnes coached basketball, and he would say the same thing, that those offense. And growing up, I saw those offense. Yeah, those offense. I was in high school, college, middle school. I don't know. He was there for a long time, and a lot of those offenses when they were good was basically just like give the ball to Kevin Durant, or they had a couple really good guards, and it was just give the ball to the guard, let the guard like make something happen. I mean, if they had to run a set play and try to like needed offense, there was no play. It was just give the ball to the best guy and see what happens. And it can be a frustrating thing sometimes to watch like you say, good defense, but it can be a frustrating thing to watch those offenses.
Yeah, it is frustrating. Tennessee also falls in love with the 3-ball a little too much, so that kind of hurts them. That's why I think this game stays close. From a scoring perspective, these teams like to shoot threes. They will hit some. They're not going to go 0 for the world. I see this game playing out with a little bit of pace, some turnovers here and there, but both teams going on runs, but it's staying fairly close. I see the score being like 75-70, somewhere in there, putting us in the 140s range. That's where I think this one ends. It might be like 68-73, something around there, but I think we're going to get over the 136.
All right, so we're going Butler plus 7.5 and over 139, you said?
36.
136. Okay. And it's interesting. You talk about, Tennessee's defense or whatever, but we're still taking the over. And we talk about the same thing with college football, right? It's partially about how good your defense is, and it's partially about how many possessions you have. More possessions just means more points, right? It's similar to baseball. We talk about strikeout props, same sort of thing. Like when people ask me about modeling player props for strikeouts, it's like half the battle is figuring out how many outs you think the guy's going to get, how many innings he's going to go, then figuring out strikeouts, because you got a high strikeout pitcher, but if in a situation because of the opposing team drawing, higher pitch count, maybe knocking him out of the game earlier, if he doesn't go as deep, he's not going to go over. If he's a low strikeout guy, but he goes deep, he's going to have lots of opportunities for strikeouts. The same thing we're talking about here. Tennessee has good defense, but if we're playing at a little bit over tempo, shooting a lot of threes, that's going to kind of offset that. We can still believe they have a good defense and still think they go over. Those aren't contradictory thoughts.
Yeah, and it's not like 136 is a crazy high number or anything either.
Right.
And like when I say, we've talked about this before, when you shoot threes, that leads to a lot of long rebounds, which means
fast break points.
Yeah, fast break points that you're not ready for, don't have the defense set up on. So I think a little bit of that happens. It wouldn't surprise me to see a little bit of pressure, full court pressure out of Tennessee, since they're a deeper team, which also would speed the game up.
Yeah. All right. So the must-see TV segment. Again, as yesterday, there's some tournament games that don't have lines yet. Who's in the championship game in Maui? I guess that would be Creighton.
Maybe Arizona, maybe?
Arizona probably.
I think Arizona's looked.
They're up early, yeah. So I guess that would be, that would obviously want to see that one.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's even tomorrow. Maybe that's later on. But whatever. There's all
the total high enough in that game.
Oh, there you go. There's all sorts of whatever. The point is there's all sorts of tournament games that we don't have lines for yet, but there are a couple of really good games kicking off tomorrow that we do have lines for. One of them I just have to talk about, Baylor. A really good game. They're only favored by 32. So, I mean, that's must only. Yeah, model laying points again there. So just a little Easter egg for you there. Model laying points.
Is this the fourth time they've been favored by 30 this year?
It's something like that. But I don't think the model's taken them with these big numbers before. A lot of times it's like just too many, like we talked about before, it's too many points. And it might be the fourth time Baylor's favored by this much, but it might also be the fourth time that the model's laying a number this big, because it does not like doing it. But anyway, a lot of good games. But Jake, the one that you highlighted, jumped out to me as well. It's early, so hopefully you can. Hopefully, if you're working, you can keep this on. Maybe you're off work, whatever. Maybe hopefully you can keep an eye on this one. 11 a.m. Central. Kansas at NC State. Maybe you could talk about this a little bit and educate the viewer. I'm still kind of in college football mode. I'm kind of watching some basketball, but I'm not into it as much as you are. It's part of why I built a model, because the model can sort through all this data a little bit better than I can. Kansas, to me, seeming like a team that's got to figure out the injuries, the health of guys, get guys in, work through all that stuff. Definitely the sky is the limit with regards to the potential, but where are they right now is kind of, I think, the big question with regards to getting everybody healthy together on the same page. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Sideline says this should be Kansas minus 7.5. This game also out in the Bahamas. Southern locked in a B grade play on NC State plus 8.5. Jake, what is your pick on this one?
Yeah, we're grabbing the points with NC State going 8.5. Like you said, Kansas is just they've got two guys right now that are playing out of their mind. And Grady Dick is everything that every recruiting person said he is. Can shoot absolute lights out. Just a very good player, plays hard. And Jalen Wilson is finally playing up to where everybody thought he would his whole career. I think he's averaging above 20. He had a 30-point game the other night. He's just they're playing at top tier level. It's the rest of the team. They're just not getting points from people. Like you've got Harris, who's the point guard, who's not really supposed to score a bunch, but he's the third leading scorer, and he's at 9 points, and he's shooting the ball. I think he's at 25% from three. That's not going to help. And then McCullers, the Texas Tech transfer, who was supposed to be a very good defensive player, which he's doing that well, but he's not scoring like he did at Texas Tech. He's shooting like 14% from three, and those were who you kind of were looking for your third and fourth scorers. Both those guys are really struggling. The rest of the team, they're trying things and like plugging guys in. I mean, MJ Rice really hasn't got going. He's only played in the 2 games this year. I don't know if he's supposed to play this one or like even if he is, I don't think he's at quite 100%. So it's going to take a little bit to get him going, which he could easily step in and be the third scorer right now. It's not going to be tough. But the
bar's low.
Yeah. I mean, they're getting Self back, so maybe that helps. Maybe that changes things around. But NC State has been very surprising to me. I didn't expect them to be where they are right now. They haven't played anybody of real value yet, but they're taking care of business. You can only beat who's on your schedule. And when you're beating them the way they are, it's unsurprising there. You've got 4 guys in double digits. They're shooting the ball very well from the floor, hitting 51% from the floor. 3, not so much. They were more of that kind of that St. John's kind of vein of things where it's more about pace and space and getting going and getting the bucket before the defense gets set. And they'll do that. I think Kansas will struggle a little bit with that pace. I mean, they've got the guards to do it, but I've seen them, like they went through parts of that Duke game and even the team, I forget who they played after, where they kind of struggled with them, almost lost that game, came back and won. But they just go through offensive periods where, I mean, if Wilson misses a couple of shots or if Grady Dick's not on the floor or something like that, where they're struggling to score, and NC State is not going to be in that same scenario. They should be able to score when they want, and there's not really that big guy that Kansas normally has, like the who I can't say his name for the championship team a couple of years ago, and then last year they had guys that could really defend the rim. They don't have that anymore. They kind of was hoping McCullers would be your defensive stopper, and he's not been playing that well. So I just don't think they've got the defense to win this by 10. I think Kansas wins. It's just I don't think they're getting the double digits, 12 to 15-point lead that they need to keep this above the 8.5.
Yeah, it was Southern Utah that Kansas struggled with, only won by 6 points. And you make a good point about NC State, right? Haven't played anybody. Average margin of victory, though, around 25 points a game. And, how you beat the teams matters. And it's not just about margin of victory. I mean, that's a good thing to look at. If you're more of a defensive-minded team, maybe you look at average points allowed, that sort of thing. But whatever metric you're kind of looking at, how you perform against those teams is still an indicator of how you're going to perform against better teams. Just drop it down a little bit, right? They sure aren't going to be Kansas by 25. But the idea is if they've been 25 points better on average, a bunch of those games are at home, so we'll say 20, whatever. Yeah. 20 points better than those teams, you say, well, then Kansas is maybe 25 points better than those teams. They lose by 5, right? It's some rough math, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's the idea that the fact they've been playing well against those teams does matter. That you shouldn't just say, I want to ignore it, because if they're playing bad against those teams, that matters. If they're playing good, that also matters. And like you said, the NC State team, played fairly well so far, looking to be respectable at least. I feel like there's a college football joke in here. If Cousin Jared was here, he'd talk about Mr. MJ Morris and his disappointing play as of late, how the offense is struggling, right? But I guess that's completely misplaced, right?
Yeah. I mean, at least this seems to be the opposite end, where the defense is a little bit misplaced from NC State, but the offense is there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, flip of the football team. All right, last one here to the overtime segment, 7:30 p.m., Jackson State at Michigan. Model says this should be Michigan minus 18.5. Model elected an A grade play on Jackson State plus 22. Just thinking it's way too many points. It feels wrong to take Jackson State at Michigan. It does. It feels wrong. But I mean, the spread's the great equalizer, right? And it's not that we're taking them to win. It's that we're getting a boatload of points. Jake, why should we take a boatload of points with Jackson State? And what was the official number that you just locked in?
I got the same number. I got 22, which was nice, because Michigan. This is more of play against Michigan, right? They're getting way too much respect. They're not playing that well. They got blown out by Arizona State. Played a close game to Eastern Michigan. I mean, and Ohio. I know they blew out. Yeah, I know
that Ohio game went to overtime.
Yeah, and I think Ohio really should have won that the way the game was going. But they blew out Pittsburgh. That doesn't say much. So I don't know. Their guards are struggling. Like the scoring from their guards has just disappeared. Howard has been good. I mean, Dickinson. Everybody knows what Dickinson is. There's no reason to dive into how great of a player he is because it's just obvious. But besides Jet Howard, there's not really much. They're shooting below 30% from three, and then they're really just besides even scoring from the floor. Besides Dickinson, who's up around like 62% from the floor. There's not much there. They're just not shooting the ball well. They're not scoring well. They're struggling for the free throw line, which can be kind of a factor of not being able to score well. Like if you're not shooting the ball well, I mean, a lot of times that means your form is off, and if your form is off, your free throw is off because that is basically just a form shot.
Right.
And so it's not looking good. And they're shooting 64% from there. They really got to get the guards to step up if they have any idea of being a factor in the Big Ten or anything, because it's so easy to shut them down. Like big guys, it sucks for them because you really have to have guards to get you the ball unless you're uber talented and athletic guy. If you're a back to the bucket kind of guy like Hunter Dickinson is, you've got to depend on somebody to get you the ball so that you can score, and that's easy to stop, or easy not necessarily to stop, but like make that as hard as possible. Then there's not as much time on the shot clock, and it's a rush shot instead of you being able to work the moves that you need to. This Jackson State team, they're not very good.
I take a little offense to that. I feel like, and the competition has been great, but I feel like, I mean, they've lost by 9, 6, and 3. I mean, I feel like that's pretty solid. And they've played 3 teams that I know that they're actually D1 teams. They're not some of because I feel like there's a handful of teams at the bottom that I'm like, is that a Division I school? Like I go through these teams all the time, but I feel like I get confused on a few of them. Like I know these are all real teams, and they've lost by single digits to all of them. Like I feel like Jackson State's pretty respectable, you know.
They don't shoot well, and they make up for it by turning it over 17 times a game.
It's not a good combo.
No, and that's probably why they're losing, because they like to play at a high speed, which is good and which will help them and will create more possessions, maybe inflate the turnover number, but at least let them score a bit. I think they'll take advantage of the guard play here and be able to score and keep this one around 20, 15, 20, somewhere in there. Maybe even a good, decent backdoor to get back there, because they're going to play. These guys are playing in Michigan, and they're going to want to play the whole time. Where Michigan may get way ahead and take the air out of the ball.
Doesn't care, yeah.
Yeah, they don't have an incentive to really run the score up. I just think the speed of the play of Jackson State will help them take advantage of some of the weaker guard play of Michigan and let them score enough to stay not in the game, but in the game from a cover standpoint.
Hey, I know you're not high on Jackson State, but I'm just going to tell you, look, they lost by 9 at ACU. They lost by 6 at Tulsa, and they lost by 3 at Little Rock. And obviously Michigan's better than all those teams, but I think if they go out and play like they did against those 3 teams, they're covering this number, because Michigan just isn't there yet to destroy a team that's playing moderately competent. And I wouldn't say, again, Jackson State's not good, but I feel like they're playing moderately competent basketball. I feel like if they keep playing like this, they're going to have a good season. And so I think they're I don't know how much confidence matters. I really don't. I think sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. So it's kind of hard to say that, but that it will have an effect. I don't really know. But I mean, they've got to be pretty confident, right? As confident as you can be for an 0-3 team. Like they've played respectable. They're going in there. They know they probably aren't going to win this game, but they got to at least feel like, hey, we've hung in there. We can hang in there and make this an interesting game. And I'm not even sure they could do that necessarily, but I think, like you said, it's a play against Michigan. Like I said, I love this play as well, from aside from the model, just because Michigan if Michigan was as good as we thought they were going to be, they would not have lost the way they did to Arizona State. They would not have had that Ohio game when we took, that was one of the plays of the day I had. We took like 15 with Ohio, and it was literally never even close to being in doubt. I mean, it's the same, and it feels like the same thing's going to happen here, that I feel like it's more likely Michigan's up 10 for most of this game. Like I said, if Jackson State does anything like what they've done before, like I said, against ACU was a decent team. Michigan's a little bit better than that. They lose by 15, something like that.
Yeah, like I said, like I think we went through it when we were on Michigan a couple, maybe last week or the week before, where they were favored under 10 and they ended up winning by 20. And I was like, if these guards continue to play like this, they will be very hard to stop. And the guards have not. So
I think that was Pittsburgh, and I think that was more of a play against Pittsburgh, who at least now getting their main scorer back, playing more, might start to show a little more competency. But Pittsburgh looked lost for the first whatever that was 4 games of the season. So that was just again taking the opportunity to fade Pittsburgh in those spots.
Yes, yeah,
and that was Michigan's only good game.
Yeah, sometimes that's what you got to do. You got to figure out who you need to fade, not who you need to back.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what we're doing here, too, by taking Jackson State as more fading Michigan. So we're grabbing 22 in Jackson State. That's our overtime segment. And that's all we've got. Jake, any parting words for People's Wednesday?
Yeah, for some of these big tournament games, be sure to follow us on TikTok. We're going to put a couple plays up there from the games that we weren't able to cover here because they didn't have the lines out. So be sure to find us on there, and we'll be giving you a couple extra plays.
I'll see if I can keep my undefeated streak rolling. All right. Well, thanks for tuning into this episode of Fix with the Professor. Don't forget to subscribe so you can ensure all the sports betting content we provide on this channel is dropped right into your feed. We'll be back again tomorrow with more sports betting content. And until then, as always, best of luck. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.